You ever wondered how some cash practices they start running ads, they're doing more marketing, and then their practice just kind of blows up, right? But you're kind of left struggling to grow. And it turns out most of the time this actually comes back to how well your front desk converts leads. And so in this video, I'm going to cover three things. Number one, what's the most common cause of revenue leaks for cash practices? Number two, I'm going to cover three common KPIs that you want to measure at the front desk so that you can increase performance of your front desk. And then lastly, number three, how to spot lost patients before it actually becomes a problem. And so by the end of this, I promise that you'll have a step-by-step guide and know exactly what to track at the front desk so that you can add about $10,000 back into your practice every single month. And so this story is super near and dear to me because this is exactly what was happening in my cash practice, where it was me and one of the PT, and I could not get this guy's schedule full. And so I did what most other cash practices will do, and that is I'll find some other avenue of what I thought was the golden goose to get more patients into my practice. And so what I did was I ramped up some of my organic marketing, but then also I started to invest in paid advertising. And I had an admin that I ultimately like just couldn't handle the calls and some of the back end stuff in the practice anymore. And so I hired an admin to begin taking these phone calls. And in hindsight, years later, I found out that I was missing about $10,000 in my practice every single month on just paid advertising alone. And it's because we couldn't handle objections and we couldn't, get to leads quick enough. And there was just a big debacle. And I was spending more and more and more money every single month on paid advertising because I thought that that was going to get us to the next level. But really, the problem was is I was having a bunch of drop off that was happening at the front desk. And what I want to do is I want to give you guys some tools so that you can go in and find some of these revenue leaks and prevent this from being a common problem in your practice as well, right? And so, uh, what are the like main common causes of revenue leaks at the front desk, especially for cash practices? And oftentimes for these cash practices, you have a front desk who's doing a lot of things for you. Maybe they're greeting patients, maybe they're checking patients out, maybe they're taking new patient phone calls, and like they're kind of wearing a lot of hats, which can be pretty mentally expensive, right? And it's tough to have them do all of these tasks well. And so what happens is that starts to manifest itself in a couple of ways where, hey, I'm not following up with leads quick enough because maybe I'm greeting a new patient and I get a phone call that comes in, but I'm greeting that new patient. So speed to lead becomes a challenge. And ideally you want to be calling patients within 5 minutes, or best case scenario, when the phone rings, we're able to actually pick it up. And when that's not happening, we need to make sure that we either hire somebody else, we reorganize the role so that that person can actually knock those things out. Speed lead continues to be one of the biggest reasons for actually like paid traffic, why people aren't answering or you're not able to get a hold of them. The other big one is lack of consistent follow-up, where maybe you've started to get busy and you have continual leads coming in. And so front desk at that point, they say, well, we're busy, so like I'll get to them when I get to them. And what happens is I call that new lead once, maybe twice, and now I'm not having that consistency and follow-up where, hey, maybe I follow up with them over the course of a couple of days and I make multiple touch points. And then, if I don't hear from them, or maybe I talk to them on the phone, maybe I check in on them a week or 2 weeks so that I can actually make sure that this person's getting the care that they need. And what often happens is these type of things get kind of put onto the back burner because we're wearing other hats, right? We're trying to greet people, we're trying to check people out, we're trying to do all these other things, but I'm not actually accomplishing the main thing that I'm looking to accomplish. Now, the last place that revenue typically leaks out is your front desk struggles on that phone call to actually handle objections. And so maybe we get people on the phone, but they're just not great at really preventing objections from happening on the phone. Or if they do come up, they don't really have frameworks to be able to handle them like you do. And so, oh, I need to talk to my insurance company, or oh, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need to think about it. And then you try to follow up with them and then they just kind of ghost you. And that's a big, big problem where that solo practice cash practice owner or multi practice owner and you've been taking the calls for a long time, you go to hand them off. You don't have the ability, like for whatever reason, I see practice owners struggle to give that information to other practice owners. And so those are some of the common like places that I kind of see. I would say the last one actually is probably, we struggle to actually get patients to purchase a package. And so, maybe we do handle the insurance objection, we get them to actually come in and, cancel their no-shows can be a common problem. But then what happens is that when they come into the clinic, they don't actually purchase a plan of care. And so when it was you taking those phone calls, now suddenly that patient isn't nearly as warm as they once were. And that's a pretty big problem, right? Like, now suddenly if my package conversion in the clinic was 80% when the owner was taking the calls or, the PT, and now you've offloaded these phone calls. And now what happens is those rates actually plummet, right? And now they're only 40%. And so now you've got a pretty big hole in your schedule because people aren't scheduling follow-ups and people aren't completing a plan of care. And that's a big red flag and a big thing that oftentimes comes up. And so what I did was I actually created a calculator for you. I'll actually link it below. This is linked also in our school community if you're not a part of that. But this calculator will actually show you exactly where the bottleneck is. And after working with over 100 practices at this point, I've identified four common places that most practice owners are losing revenue from their front desk. It'll show you exactly where you're losing them. It'll also show you, the percentages you should be hitting and the potential revenue that you're leaving on the table with your current percentages. And so, what I hope is happening is you're not losing 10K a month like I was, and you'll actually have a solid plan and path to identify the bottleneck and then fix it. So, that'll be linked below. Now, uh, what are some like ways that we ultimately want to prevent this? One of the best ways is tracking things because what I don't want to have happen and what I was doing was I was tracking like gross revenue, total evals, and like I was just kind of calling it good at that. And it just wasn't enough. I was living week by week. And I want you to have solid numbers and metrics. And I'm going to keep it super simple. I want you to have three metrics that you're actually going to track. And one of the first big ones is total leads that opted in or called or whatever your practice has most of, or the combination thereof, total leads and opt-ins to initial evaluation, right? So what percentage of those people actually came in and showed up for an eval? And that's going to be a big indicator of what your front desk follow-up process is like. Are they consistently following up? Can they handle objections? Are they actually making enough touch points and being quick with getting these people in the clinic? And if that percentage is light, what I look for actually is about 55%. It's what we've had in our practice and what I see kind of across a lot of other cash practices across the industry where you want to make sure that we are making consistent follow-ups. Now, if you have a bunch of paid traffic, that percentage could be potentially a little bit lower. But if you've been taking the calls for a little while in your practice, it's going to help you establish baseline and really know what that percentage is. And so about 55% of those people should be reaching out. If not, we've got some problem with how consistently we're reaching out or following up with people, or maybe we're getting a lot of objections on the phone I'm not able to actually overcome them. And so you'll kind of have to triage that a little bit. Now, the next one is schedule utilization. This is basically a determination of how full our schedule is. Now, if you're in a dental industry or something like that, you can get some more ebbs and flows, but I want a large percentage especially for PT, Chiro, functional med, those kind of things where you're seeing people for a plan of care, is I want to have a nice, steady, increasing or stable schedule utilization. Schedule utilization basically just refers to how full the schedule is. If I have 100 available spots a month, how many of those spots are actually taking up? So available spots and then the top number here to get the actual percentage is how many people you actually saw. So total visits seen divided by total available spots. You multiply by 100, make a percentage. Ideally, this is going to help us determine how good the front desk is keeping the schedule full. Because if we're having ebbs and flows, it could mean a couple things. Hey, we're not following up with leads consistently that cancel or reschedule. Maybe we're not good at recapturing those people. Maybe the people, the leads that are reaching out, maybe we got too busy, and what happens is you get too busy, we can't follow up with the leads, and then we freak out, and then the schedule drops, and then we ramp it right back up, right? And that schedule utilization can help us determine whether or not there's a problem somewhere in the chain of keeping people on the schedule, and maybe you schedule their plan of care out. That can be a really helpful tool to keep that schedule really stable. The last one is package conversion. And it seems like a weird one because it's like, well, they could fall on the provider, that could be on, all kinds of things, right? There's a lot of, you got the front desk, you've got the provider, which one is it? But it's one of the biggest things when I see a new front desk step into a cash practice where I had somebody very seasoned taking these calls. These patients get very warm. They understand what the process is. They understand what the conversation should sound like. They tell them about the insurance. They tell them about the cost, and they really warm these people up to working with their providers beyond one session. And if we're only working with people for one session, hey, maybe we ultimately didn't warm that person up quite as much as we needed to. And so that's one of the biggest things. So what I want you to do is basically look at your package conversion percentages, right? What were they when you were taking the phone calls and what are they now? And it's basically like, hey, if I have 10 evals, how many of those people actually bought a package? Typically, I want to see, depending on the type of traffic you're running, 80+%. If you got a lot of colder traffic, certainly it's going to be a little bit of a lower percentage, but I want that percentage to maintain and potentially increase as we offload those phone calls. What you don't want to have happen is now I'm getting a bunch of costs and insurance and problem objections when people walk into the clinic and we've offloaded these phone calls. So those are three big KPIs: opt into eval, schedule utilization rate, package conversion. And then the last thing I want to talk about is how do I actually like implement this stuff? How do I spot lost patients before it actually becomes a problem? Because now it's like, here's the common places that these leaks are happening. Here's some numbers to measure. Now, how do we actually practically figure this stuff out? And one of the easiest ways to do that is to install end of day reports and end of week reports that ultimately lead to monthly reports. And with those three multiple touch points, now the admin is self-reporting exactly what's going on. And you want to identify some key metrics that are specific to your practice. And we want to have that data come out daily, weekly, monthly, because that's going to help you ultimately get to where you want to go and be able to push those percentages up as high as we need them to be. So install those. That's going to help you get a better understanding of exactly what it is that you need. Have that self-report, be able to look over those, and now that suddenly gives you the ability to have a little more peace of mind, right? Because what most practice owners do is they freak out about their numbers as their schedule's not as full as they want it to be. And so what happens is hey, you install somebody new to the front desk. 3 or 4 months, weeks later, you start to freak out because your schedule's not as full. And now we go back and we backtrack this stuff. And that's why I like end of day and end of week reports, because we actually want to catch that stuff before we're way down the road, right? And if I can catch this stuff or there's some self-reporting that's going on, like the relationship I have with my front desk is she reports these numbers, and if there's something off or not working, she just shoots me a message. Hey, I'm seeing this going on right now, or I'm getting a lot of insurance objections. Do you have a moment to chat about that? And that helps create an environment for us to be open and figure out some of these challenges before they become a major problem. And if I can catch them a day out, a week out, now suddenly I'm not 3 months down the line freaking out about, patients being lost, people slipping through the cracks and those kind of things. And so generate reports, self-report, all of those things are going to be perfect to help make sure that we're not letting people leak and fall through the cracks. So now you know how to, ultimately find and plug some of these leaky buckets, use that calculator that we plugged in. Now maybe you want to be able to help overcome some insurance objections or other objections that you're getting in the clinic. Check out some of the other videos on our channel, and that will keep your front desk moving forward. Until next time.